Today, Donald Trump and Ohio Senator J.D. Vance will campaign together in Michigan. It is their first joint rally appearance since Donald Trump named him as his VP pick during the Republican National Convention. This was a convention which served as a reminder of Trump's total domination of the Republican Party. Despite a promised new tone of unity, the same old Trump came out the moment he went off script, repeating lies of a stolen election and blaming Democrats for his legal troubles. Meanwhile, President Biden is expected to spend the weekend recovering from COVID at his home in Rehoboth Beach. The list of congressional Democrats calling for the president to end his campaign now stands at 35. On Friday, Ohio Senator Sherrod Brown added his name to that tally. Joining us now to discuss is MSNBC political analyst and former Florida Congressman Carlos Curbelo. Woo!
Congressman.
Congressman. Wait, was the Congressman, were you in Milwaukee?
You know, unfortunately, I couldn't make it.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I did. So I can tell you, Carlos, we would not have been welcome there for a lot of reasons. But I want to pick up on something that Simone led us in with, and that is this idea that this whole convention, and I have to give props, well orchestrated, well run, well timed, a lot of, I mean, you cannot fault the administration of this event. But you can when it comes to this idea of unity. You had a lot of conversation. That was the push, particularly after the shooting in Butler. I'd like to play for you Trump's unity sort of conversation where he talks about in our age of politics. Let's hear what he has to say about our age of politics.
In an age when our politics too often divide us, now is the time to remember that we are all fellow citizens. We are one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. They're destroying our country. We have to work on making America great again, not on beating people. And we won. We beat them in all. We beat them on the impeachments. We beat them on indictments.
I don't know how unified you felt after that, but this idea that this was about unity, Trump really couldn't bring himself to nail that, could he?
Well, Mike, I'll tell you, a week ago, after the horrible assassination attempt, I think we were all pretty shaken, right, by that. And I heard, right, everyone talking about how Donald Trump was going to tear up his speech and come up with something new and really try to bring the country together. And then I'll confess, Monday, when I saw him walk out at convention, it did seem like a different Donald Trump. I was hopeful. I said, you know what, he does seem a bit more humble, a bit more, thoughtful. But I'll tell you, that speech really, really missed the mark. I mean, his campaign set very high expectations for what it would mean for the country, honestly, for what the country needed from an acceptance speech at this point in our history. And it really fell short, and it just divided the country more. You really kind of saw Trump's instincts come out as that speech continued, right? The divide and conquer nature of Donald Trump could not help but shine through.
I also thought it was interesting, Congressman, that you had Donald Trump talking about unity. And when you heard about unity from J.D. Vance, it was really about unity within the Republican Party. That was the message that he was trying to sell, which is interesting, given that I think there are a lot of Republicans who feel that in choosing J.D. Vance, Trump and the people around him were saying, you either get on board with our MAGA vision of the world or you get off. And that was repeated in Punchbowl News. Choosing the first-term GOP senator from Ohio is a brazen middle finger to the few Trump skeptics left in the party. It's also a sign that the Republican Party's transformation into Trump's mold is nearly complete. Do you agree?
Yeah, I agree with that. I think it's two things. Number one, a projection of confidence or maybe of overconfidence. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I thought Marco Rubio for sure would have been the candidate that would have given Trump the greatest political boost come November with skeptical Republicans who don't like Donald Trump, and also with Hispanic voters maybe. They passed over Marco Rubio for someone who speaks directly to the Trump base, and that is exactly what they went for, and that's what they're doing. They're saying the people that matter here are the strongest supporters of Donald Trump. And this is no surprise, Alicia, because since Donald Trump first was able to come into power, right, once he became the Republican president in 2017, the #1 factor in Republican politics has been loyalty to Donald Trump. He demands absolute loyalty, and that was reflected in his VP pick.
You know, it's so interesting, though, because in the lead up to this convention, prior to the assassination attempt, Chris LaCivita and Susie Wiles, they really laid out what the Trump campaign, what was their strategy, if you will, for winning. They talked about expanding the map, making a play for places like Minnesota. LaCivita, who is really a political organizer who was cut his teeth in Virginia politics, says that Virginia's on the table this cycle. But then you go and you pick J.D. Vance, and to your point, Congressman, this is not an expansion. This is not a play for suburban women, or this didn't look like a play for black men or Latino men. This looked like a play for base voters. And I don't know how in a general election you win places like Minnesota and Virginia doing things like they did at this convention last week.
Well, that's right, Simone. And I think this is also indicative of how Trump and his organization work. I mean, you're right. LaCivita and Susie Wiles in particular, I know her well. She's brilliant. She's a brilliant strategist. I think she's the reason why Donald Trump made it through these primaries and is where he is today. But at the end of the day, the Trump campaign, the Trump organization, it's a family business. And who made the decision? The sons. The sons of Donald Trump said, this is the guy who will help us keep this going. This isn't just about, uniting the country or trying to win this election. This is about who is best suited to help us keep this going, this family business. And the Trump campaign, Trump politics is basically just another division of the Trump organization. And who made the decision on the VP? It was the family, and probably overruling some of the strategists on the campaign.
I think building off of Simone's point about that base of vote and how you position yourself as a candidate to win a national election. You had NBC News reporting there was Nikki Haley, who took more than 2 months to endorse him after she ended her White House bid, speaking to those who have some doubts about Trump. There was Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, a Trump ally turned challenger, unleashing a robust attack on President Joe Biden. So you have these two figures, both of whom challenged Trump, bending the knee to him after they were summarily vanquished. And yet and still, Donald Trump isn't speaking to the voters that supported them, particularly at the end where 25% of the Republican base, because, folks, you got to understand the Republican base just isn't Trump and MAGA. There's a lot of Republicans out there who aren't a part of that. And that's what Nikki, those are the folks Nikki was drawing. What happened there? And how is there any way they get that, or do those voters kind of just sort of sit on the side? Or is that a play for Joe Biden? Because I don't see anybody really making an effort to bring them in.
Well, Michael, I think that if the Democrats can get organized, Trump and his campaign.
Here y'all go.
Trump and his campaign.
We're going to talk about the Democrats next, okay?
If the Democrats can get organized, and I'm sure you'll get to that later, Trump and his campaign will regret the missed opportunity that this convention was. I think you're right, Michael, what you said at the beginning. It was well organized. It was made for TV. It was produced by Donald Trump himself and scripted by Donald Trump. And for what they wanted, they did a very good job. Now, in terms of expanding the tent, something that you dedicated a lot of time to when you were chairman of the GOP, they really did not do that. And I think it's because they fundamentally don't want to do that. They want to win with their people. They don't want to have to make any concessions. They don't want to really recognize any of the people, the dissenters, the people who have been critical of Donald Trump and took too long to apologize. That's not their instinct. That's not who they are. Now, again, if the Democrats get organized, I think that could be very costly to them in November.
Now, I appreciate that. And what's critically important about what you just said, Carlos, is the fact that sets up the, well, if we lose, it was stolen. Because if I'm only concentrating my effort around a select part of the electorate, meaning my hardcore base, that's not enough to win. So when I don't win, of course, it was stolen. Carlos Curbelo, really appreciate you, my friend, former member of Congress.